mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Rinpoche.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nope.
Tintin da tiri nga zo da che tang tanda chi tenjor ji mulu za chenpo de to ba za ma zi be ke chi ngone tane ke chi sen de yang ko chibo yung ya tang chibo chima yang chi de ne dewan ro be ke lamga ta tambe ki chu 텐디제 가서 체요래 텐디데 응원에 자친부 인바탕 대가나 이게 텔라 카르세고다지 랑라 제시랑탕 그 appreciation 오지 오고요레스
So in general, reflecting on the difficulty of having a precious human birth, having taken birth as a human being with all of the leisures and endowments. And not only that, but to have these really fortuitous conditions in which we've met with the Dharma. And so not just being focused on achieving welfare and happiness in this life, but instead to put our intentions toward the goal of liberation and awakening, to traverse the path with the objective or the main the main motivation in life to traverse the path to liberation and awakening is really so very precious. So recognizing just how fortunate our circumstances really are, then we can rejoice in our own great fortune and give rise to a sense of gratitude and appreciation.
我的听的大概变到恰恰为呢，我做就我呢。수다 수임빈 나래 팀도 고 대화 안동켄 직당 고 동네 면동켄 직 차디어와 팀들인도 다조 직 나도다 대치 양타바 마용와디 또 라소소키데 줄리 유베다 직 넘버 똑바 넘버 똑소모 직 요래 오다 팀도 티게 직 나도다 직 소로 매완다고 고직 자승모 서거와 와다 성년디 대차디요 대인이 당가서 주님네 지위네 가라 지 기타남 도매와다 차 톱그 말이 디나요 지 그 텐디지 곰바 짬지 그와 지 나다 곰자서야 더지 참바타 닌겐도 지 요위나 남토 동고 농도 그래 남토 동고 농베 가라 내 갑당 탑도 좀 내가 단다라야 대치지 투구요래 양 탈도 양 되네 지
공타 태세 오케이 so 곰 베칼라 닝제 당 데 곰네 드네 고농게라와 드네
용 방고 농도 그래서 용 방고 농네 되네 고네 갑양 베 로로지 용구를 류샘ninja 로로지 디 류샘ninja 로로도 수대 그래서 내가 저 참내지 오늘 전에 됐으면 여보 땅비나 당가서 삼그러워 가서 배 사제닝지 오직 논나 배 로로 십차 그래 삼그래 칼라닝지 오직 사나 칼라 힘보직 사위나 되네 가서 배지 루센이 뭐 로로차 그래서 얘는 저 차투고 말와 당원에 리셈 보지 솔로 지 라왕로 지 투간데 고지 검자바데 데 검케야트니 징 조송로 지 땅마고 와로 아 지금은 지 솔로로 지 깔마지 기나마 지 단다 강연도 뭐뭐 트디요나 지금은 검장해지 그거를 섬노 땅비나 네 지 계직 담보를 강연 요비나요 계직 니베도 지 리셈니 야를 소대 그 팀이 차비고 예스 아 팀다디 이번에 전에
So everybody, really just about absolutely everyone, has the same wish to be happy, and nobody wants to suffer. And when we investigate, what it is mainly that prevents us from being happy, really it becomes quite clear that it is mainly due to the discursive thoughts in one's own mind stream. So we have all of these multitudes of thoughts and concepts that we're constantly following after and engaged with and causing to proliferate more and more. And as long as we are caught up in all of those concepts and thoughts, there's not really ever a real moment's rest. So we're not able to really relax. There's always a little bit of a tension or sort of a friction or agitation due to the discursive mind. And when we practice the Dharma, it's also not very often that we're able to, even in the context of Dharma practice, to enter into a thought-free awareness or to really be completely without concepts. However, when we meditate, and our mind becomes deeply concentrated on the object of our meditation, whether it is through generating compassion or meditating on an object with single pointed focus, through the power of that concentration, we're able to suppress the head of discursive thoughts and afflictive emotions to a relatively great extent compared to in our everyday normal activity. So we'll find that as a result of that, there's a tremendous amount of rest and relaxation that happens both physically and mentally. So there's real relaxing for the mind and body. And this is really the best way to find some relief or some real relaxation. So if you think about it, when we think about, what will really allow us to relax, what will really, bring us some happiness, there are these ideas like, if I, go to a really beautiful place, a beautiful island somewhere, a beautiful place, or if I eat a really, prepare just some really delicious food, and enjoy that food with good company in a beautiful place, then I'll really relax. That's real relaxation. That creates the conditions of real relaxation and enjoyment. But actually, that is often not really the case because so there might be some level of relaxation, some degree of enjoyment and relaxation that occurs through those conditions, but really real relaxation comes from as long as we're not we don't have control over our own mind. The mind is still sort of running at its regular pace of involvement with discursive thoughts and concepts. Then there's no real release or relaxation there. So really the greatest form of relaxation is actually meditation. And we can really see this in circumstances where maybe we're particularly bothered, or there's a real kind of problem or challenge that we're confronted by. And then in the midst of that angst or anxiety, if we sit down to meditate, even if the thoughts are all still swirling there, but there's some degree of focus that occurs in the mind, then we really will see that even just that little bit of meditation has had a truly profound effect. So it can be that in the first moment, when we look at our mind, we see a lot of activity and a lot of turmoil there. But then in the second moment, or even just seconds later, as a result of one's meditation, there is a significant amount of relaxation that has entered into both body and mind.
我在点对这个做，等于讲去个那些的，这个汤波啦，number 多把是那里，刚也有啊，当初这个你别讲了，这他绿色你不对我用特别。 气头啦，当我的来老用过嘛的，天天印度，他做切小的开的斯拉维纳，这去年来切下的，过的这 daily routine 的我就 routine 的我就切过个啥的是，他们这边呢，这他谈谈个这样，气给他 obstacles 呢，别忙不着啊，什么这当边呢，他谈谈，这。 Ben yang go lak partu ki jing no choba la sam tang bina jik tele chu chi dengen thoya hira mewa gomja dengen thoya hira mewa ji gomban ro ta ta thindi hira mewa ta ji thga na yi ki ta the mai bi ki ta ji distraction pe da lo yulin de wa yorwa ji technology na de thindi ji indu ko yang semne ala pe me se khawro wa thindi indu ji nyamle thi ga no ko hwacha ro ji sha ma tho bi na thini nyamle tem bo yung gu ma wa thindi thindi ji ko
kong ta pap cha
mo ta ro wa pe ji khomba ro khomba senari ta hwacha senari wa thindi ji ya bo ji khomdi ma jung bi na thini ji ko parchi khwa ta ro gu wa ji ki khwa ta ro gu thindi indu 지 텔레양 단콘 휴가 나이데 지 daily routine practice 지야 당 대가 나이게 조 가르나 지 오늘 참반 다 닝제 심지야라요 지 참바다 닝제 고미야 메야당 대가 나이게 지 몰람 자야데 배 개침보래 에스데입니다 몰람 자지 또 몰람 mambo yorwa hina da tina jimye chuonde nyamlen chibina jik simje hiatam ji pan toya yin samba da tega na yi ki yang ko ji tande ne kamro ji ni nyong bande ji wang to mando wa ji nyong bande tu hyo samba wa da la so be ki chia da tega na yi da se bi se da na ga ji wa dang ya ro da tinen domba mono jara tini yorwa tini chia de kechimbo des 기시 드리려고 집이나 드리쟁가 정문에 타이콘 튜브가 나기리 그 용모 봐 대지 와트 나도 파 노트북이어레스 기시 용모 봐 와트 누비나 딱고 대화 담바 세나지 보다도 더 거레스
So we can find that in the first moment, there's an abundance of thoughts. And then in the second moment, there's some relief there. There's some spaciousness or some like a deeper sense of well-being. And yet, it's also not easy. This is not an easy process. It really takes ongoing, consistent effort and practice. So for that reason, the most important thing in our Dharma practice is regularity, essentially routine, having a solid routine of practice. Because if we don't have that, there are a lot of outer obstacles, all sorts of outer obstacles that can really throw us off track, especially right now in the West, and in particular, during this age of technology. So actually in the West, we don't have so there aren't really relatively so many people practicing the Dharma. There aren't really so many people who have a solid routine or practice of meditation. There aren't many places of refuge for practice, such as monasteries and Dharma centers. And there are so many distractions. Actually, in our present time, we are bombarded by just inconceivably, like an inconceivable amount and variety of distractions, especially in this age of technology. So it's especially difficult in these times to develop the ability for the mind to really be settled and to abide in stillness. It's especially challenging in these times. And so the only chance that we have to develop that is by creating strong tendencies or karmic imprints toward this type of abiding, and that requires a solid daily practice, because it's really a matter of building up propensity or habituation. So it's especially important to attend to the regularity of practice or routine in our daily, the routine of Dharma practice in our daily lives. If we don't attend to that, or if we neglect that, then it's quite possible that we'll fall under the influence of obstacles, that will fall under the influence of outer, like outer objects or outer phenomena. So to practice daily, to always generate love and compassion, and to have aspiration prayers, to make aspiration prayers is also very important. So there are many different ways of making aspiration prayers, but most importantly, it is important that our aspiration or our approach or intention in practice is really suffused with that aspiration that our practice may ultimately be of benefit to sentient beings, that this is really the whole purpose of our practice, is to benefit others. And also equally important is the aspiration that we may be able to subdue our own mind, to tame our own mind, to not, that we may be able to overcome the tendency to be led around by our afflictive emotions that arise and our discursive thoughts. So to make aspiration prayers is very important.
오늘 대가나 이게 먼저 칭오 보세나리다 치기의 knowledge 테니 장야라 나도 배 장고 요르와 테니 양용 배사고 요래 테니 지네 테니 지 로종체 냠용 사비나 테니 제레 코테지 मतलब 개바 차그로와 멤버이나레 다 가리나 레카 레레 가리나 뭐 테나 이게 지 다 들리 다른 거 주나 샘플 깔려 카이거리스 친구 보는 거이나 거지 다야 요리 통야 요리 this 장야라 레라오리 experiment 도라 this 레라 요리스 티니양 나 샘데 지 유추치야라 this 깔려 가보 요리스 인두 다 조직들이 걸려 가버려 조직들이 내려오래 얘는 다 조카선 티가는 냠용도 오지 싸지로와 냠용싸 투수 땅 드니 지위나 드니 가서지 타마디 지금 가서 affect emotions를 뇽몽 같은 것도 can able to can handle 드니 지도 그래스
So, generally speaking, when somebody really applies regularity to a specific training, so for instance, if somebody to become skilled or professional in a certain area, for instance, then somebody needs to acquire knowledge and acquire experience. And so through that process of acquiring knowledge or through study and then direct experience, then one really becomes proficient in whatever the topic or the activity or subject at hand. Then one really becomes skilled. And so it is the same with Dharma practice. We have to study and gather understanding, but we also have to gather experience. And this has really nothing to do with outer objects, but more with experimenting by analyzing, investigating, or becoming familiar with the inner workings of your own mind. And then without experience, then it will become difficult to really bring about any meaningful change. If we gather experience, direct experience through practice, then we will develop the ability to get a handle on our afflictive emotions. We will actually be able to have, first of all, a deeper level of awareness of what is arising in our mind, and then also the ability to be in control of that.
다 뒤에 뒤나네 다 조치효대 다단 존주차대 다 되는 거 바로 침바 초로와 다 장조 선배께 랍자 바로 침바 초리다 바로 침바 초 뒤나는 거 짐바 수템 소바좀데 치 심바레 다 되는 값사발라 가서 존주차대요레스.
So that in order to achieve this, what is most important, the most important quality is diligence or perseverance. And so this is the verse that we have arrived at this point in these teachings, the verse on diligence. And we have been in the context of these verses on the 6 perfections or the 6 paramitas. So we have already gone through the verse that it deals with generosity, likewise ethical discipline, and likewise patience. So now is the verse on diligence.
What that did tell Carses on your lesson? Tina random bashik do be Nerayang, Gola measure, Border Zontona, Locuton to Yondan Juniji, Zondu Zombajer Selavins.
So the verse is verse number 28. And it says, even hearers and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own welfare strive as if putting out a fire on their heads. Seeing this, taking up diligent effort, the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings is the Bodhisattva's practice.
Dan de la Calagore, Senato, Tanatica Senata, random bashing to be Nerayang, so that Yatanga to Danian Tota Ranji, Changjo Samba Sena, the young man and also Tipa Chimbotan, Tipa members, Lamnari, Kandarian, Taji, Nyandota Ranjanda Wina, Kurbe keep doing in bad Hako. 된 코르웨기 둥에 태양 되네 타리아 큰 도바유 이나야 되네 지 조가 랑라메네 nga 코르웨 나 타고도 삼바 지니다 주념네 챙겐들라 되네 직태바 멤버 세너리 년도다랑 야라세야지 차디어와 아 텐디 다테 년도랑 야케 텐디다 나초 더 지비나 대바 첨보 송레 sampan chikpare korwe ki dunge yawa chikpan thongu yore tene deyang korwe ki dunge tele ya tharya la ngara chikbu mayinba simjen da tamji chikpare ya ngaya dewan do gudo simjen hemba ya dewan do gudo ngaya dungan do gimendo simjen hemba ya dungan do o simjen hemba dungan mendo o ngara dungan mendo wa hindu simjen hemba la ya dungan do mendo tindiji induta nge trinki chunyamne cheya tala 데 semnya tamji 통이 zamba ching에도 대과 첨보종 다 대인도 가서 다 제가 단다 아직 주념나 칭에 연구하고 되게다 제가 남바랑이 되는 남배나네다 지 티베탄 부디즘 세그로다 틀라 특히 라차도 요래 텐도 다 틀 가르좀 걸세나 지금 랑 찍고 통달라 양배 좀도 담기도 와스 텐디인도 다 밑에 기통을 전후 되는 게 짬구요나 되네다 심야 탐지 통로 전후 이제 밑에 그러고 가서 이야기다 예스
Just a minute. So mainly, as it says, even if hearers and solitary realizers strive as if putting out a fire on their heads, so hearers or Shravakas, hearers who are Shravakas and solitary realizers who are Pratikya Buddhas, so often we can categorize the different sort of capacities of practitioners into these three categories of Shravakas, Pratikya Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, the capacity, or into the two vehicles of the greater vehicle and the lesser vehicle. So those who are Shravakas and Pratikya Buddhas fall into the category of the lesser vehicle, and they do so because their objective is mainly to achieve liberation for oneself. So they have the understanding that samsara is really pervaded by suffering, that it is nothing other than the nature of suffering. And so therefore they are absolutely resolute to get free, to achieve liberation. It is the same in the case of the greater vehicle, and that there's the understanding that there is nothing but samsara to be but suffering to be experienced in samsara, but their objective for achieving liberation is not just limited to one's own welfare, but the aspiration is to achieve liberation and awakening in order to lead all sentient beings to that state, in order to liberate all beings, to benefit and liberate all, to establish them in both temporary and ultimate happiness. And so as our and so for the one who has the aspiration of bodhicitta, then there is a real sense of identification with the other beings, and that one knows, just as I wish for happiness, all beings are the same in this desire and this wish to be happy. Likewise, just as I wish to be free of suffering, all beings are the same in wanting to be free from suffering. And so this becomes the very foundation of one's practice, this aspiration to bring ultimate, temporary and ultimate benefit to all beings. And this is particular also in our own lineage or our own tradition. The tradition of Tibetan Buddhism is a Mahayana tradition. So it has this objective, this bodhicitta aspiration or objective. And here, as it is pointing out, if even wishing for only one's own benefit, beings strive, or Shravakas in particular, Buddhas have such extraordinary diligence that's even, like trying to put a fire out from their own heads, then how much more immense, or how much more powerful should the diligence and resolve for Mahayana level practitioners be? Because if the objective or the motivation is really to achieve just one person's benefit, then to achieve all sentient beings' benefit, who so outnumber just one being's benefit, then it would only make sense that the level of diligence should be even more extraordinary.
That in the Tigan no yeke jig arwa. Tene the Tangaso di Chusho Jibu Mare, Taleka Chawa Kari in a Tsendi Kilika Kargona. Zondu go grace. That Zondu say the Tezonde. Yonten Damji Zondu Jason Rose, and also Yonten Roa. Hija Yonten Kandiji Yovina. Ta Zondu Yuna. The Teleyore, so that Zondu Yongetella. And Natana Yamna Chingenda Chivina, Zondu Yongetella, Sanji to Groa. What is a Mazibi in Jikendi Knowledge? That must say on a tonda drop where. Tiniji Yuvina, I drop with Honda, the engine drop was on Zundu Gugre. Zundu Yunata, Yonta to Gre, Zundu Yuna, Jeva to Grava, or the Inditine, and Zundu Seati, coaching Jikambi Chaya Duya in a young, Zundu Gugurella, Chichudo in a young, Zundu Gugure.
So it's very clear that diligence is necessary. Diligence is necessary to achieve anything meaningful. Even when it comes to the activities of this life, in order to actually bring any activity or any objective or agenda to fruition, we absolutely have to have diligence. We have to make effort. And so whatever qualities, whatever activity it is that we are hoping to achieve, without diligence, then there's no progress that is made. So this goes for worldly objectives, and even more so when it comes to the lofty objectives of a spiritual practitioner, to actually develop on the path of realization, leading, developing realization, and eventually arriving at the state of Buddhahood or full awakening. So in order to achieve something so profound such as this, of course, we have to have a tremendous amount of diligence. To develop qualities, to achieve a fruition, in whatever context, there is no way to do so, to be successful, without a significant amount of diligence.
Teneda Zundu Zundian, Zundu say the Samoji Tango. Gahi Gibeta, hard work. Getting the hard work rate in a young. Tigana pushing the wa, better. Trouble with the chine, Zundu lava Zundu labro in a yata, 2 Karsana Zundu say the 개 체효대 중앙 게라도 손도 존두디 지고바 강식라 존두 좀밖에 냠들래 necessary cargo yors나 쪼바지고 yes 된 contribute 나 이리 집에 pushing the word hard work 나오지 집이나 근데 디스지 셈가나 근데 레칼레야 달지 뭐네 고토와 메비 까블라 근데 지 칼레카 너야 추치위에 나야 고 칼레카 카 너야 응거래 에 리셈이야 서로 용거 말와 근데 이제 캠비 차야라고 지나다 빼 휴직 pushing the 집이나 지 칼레카고 요래 어떻게 아 가이베 칼레카는 다 give up 치야 그냥 가요로와 어다 근데 마용 위치들라 가르고스나 내가 카레 레기요나 로종 카레 치기요나 if와 계시 지고요나 텔레 네게티브 사이드 다요 말이스 뒤에다 텔레 고지 상복 초다 내가 나 예인이 다 나한테 치기 상복 쪼가지고 스타디 고 파운데이션 나오지 다 존류들라야 고 쪼가지고 그래스
So sometimes when we hear the word diligence, we think, you know, really sort of this pressure, like, yeah, I'm really going to do hard work here, or it's this feeling of pushing, right? But like very sort of intense or strong sort of pushing through. But actually, what is most important about diligence is the element of enjoyment, of really taking delight. So actually sometimes when the word sondru is defined, the Tibetan word for diligence, it's defined as taking joy in virtue, really delighting in virtue. And so we don't need to approach our Dharma practice with, you know, a real striving mentality, pushing like it's hard work. If we don't enjoy it, if we don't sort of relish it and delight in it, then it really becomes a real chore. It becomes something that's really difficult because the mind is rebelling against it. And so this is the case for all activities, worldly or Dharma, but it is especially the case in Dharma, this element, and when it comes to diligence in our Dharma practice, this element of really taking delight in or enjoying the practice is so important because so much of our Dharma practice necessitates having a relaxed state of being, both physically and mentally, being relaxed, being open, being at ease. And if there's real pushing or over efforting that involves straining in our Dharma practice, then it becomes impossible to be truly relaxed, to be physically and mentally relaxed. And in fact, there is the danger of pushing so hard that then you end up giving up. So really with whatever activity, whether it is, you know, some project or whether it is something, you know, a course of study, whether it's in the context of study or practice, it is important to approach the activity with this sort of eager mind of really looking forward to, or really enjoying, or really taking pleasure in this process of development, instead of looking at the negative side. So it's important not to develop a negative view that then kind of sees it as something that's kind of a source, you know, sort of a source of, you know, drudgery or something that you don't really want to do. So for that, so in this way, diligence really should be understood to be something that has this complete commitment and this ability to stick with and to really dedicate oneself fully, but to do so from a place of joy or really taking delight.
다지도 가서는 가서 존주세야 되다 가리년 보레세나 되다 즉 레로 그냥 보레다 다 레로 태양한테네 다 레로라마다 여러봐 베뇽네 레로 세야한다고 되네 지로바 세야 레로한다고 되네 당이 니베킬레로스 제가 나 이렇게 미빌레로 세야한테 연구를 미바세는 다 되게 느끼자고 하잖아
Yine yang te Joshua megana tene de sikti hako kumara.
미바세는 다 직디스 테로 미바세나 직 두보 용량이라고 지 와 두보 차로라고 지
So what is diligence the antidote to? Diligence is the antidote to laziness. And so there are typically explained to be, there are actually many different types of laziness or expressions of laziness, but they're typically said to be three. So these are... Right. Well, he added a fourth, but first we'll say the three. So the three are the laziness of procrastination, the laziness of nyomle gilelo, jilu gilelo, kata na dingamedo. Dani nimbe ilelo hakosong. The laziness of actually feeling. And dine jilo?
Jilo basana ta be halebe solo chimatonge. Jilo sina den lang gendri jago.
Yeah. So there's the laziness of procrastination, meaning always putting it off until tomorrow, sort of always saying, oh, I'll do it later, I'll get to it later, not right now. And then there is the laziness of self, that's like the self-disparaging laziness. So it's essentially becoming discouraged or feeling discouraged because of one's own sort of self-disparaging attitude. And then there's the laziness, which is, I can't believe I'm completely forgetting how we usually say this, but I think it's just like the sort of the laziness that's sort of like a slothful kind of laziness, or the laziness of kind of indulgent or slothful laziness. Or kind of apathy, maybe. And then there's this fourth type of laziness, which is mikbe lelo, which actually I don't remember that either. So mikbe lelo gandrede Oh, that's kind of like anticipating like bad things coming, sort of a sort of, maybe it's like a sense of, maybe it's like a dread. Yeah, maybe injikila tesalata.
Okay, so that's okay. So first terwada kasna katang de huda tananga so de zundu se ji zombe kaula tene zundu zamga da zonga so positive rawa lekaji dogo yanare 담배 초도고나 단다 공티와 나 이제 골 메효디나 다 칼레 책 말와 섬매와 속으로와 되네 중국이와 가서 되네 두른다고 제일 되네 뻔하라 랩은 되네 람상파 두트 메가 소토비아 섬로 당으로와 된디 치고 그래서 다 개베기 초디 다 메게베 초도 가상라 아임바 소바 손바 고메까나 지 콩로 시랑데베 까라 디스치 솔로 치고 요레스 인치민이 reply 지네 되네 big mistake 치그로와 이네 티가나 passion delay 당하라 베케친 보레스 negative 사리나 되네 지 positive 사리나 다 직 산이 치기 나니 치기라나 다 opportunity 참말로 요레 Yes.
Tini young chawa ngin shimpe gilelo check marebe.
다 자방이 길로 열어. 다 대체 자방이 길로 인사다.
So then there's also the laziness of delighting in negative actions or taking sort of enjoying more kind of negative or unproductive activities. So this is actually kind of together with the laziness of kind of sloth or indulgent laziness. And then as far as the first type of laziness, which is the laziness of procrastination, so this, the diligence that counteracts this is the diligence that is so clear of the benefits and positive the positivity or how much positive can be accomplished through Dharma practice, that there's absolutely no sense of like there's no ability to put it off any longer. There's just the immediate this understanding of the immediacy and the necessity of doing it right now. So there's no kind of taking it, there's no time to take it easy and kind of eventually get to it. No, it's like exactly as it is said here, strive as if putting out a fire on their head. So that that expresses that sense of immediacy, that if one's head were on fire, there would be no time to waste. One would immediately jump to putting it out. Same with, say, if a poisonous snake suddenly appeared on one's lap, one would immediately jump up and distance oneself from the snake, without throw off the snake, without feeling like there's any ability to kind of put it off or take one's time or delay. And if there's the understanding that if one does delay or put off, that actually that there's a great danger that is presented there.
Negativina dilechigo grist laimbe. Katon sobegan laimba. Tenechi negativina dilechigo yores. Bena koronda wo chimbolandi yuna tigabla pe reaction lamsanchia yomares. Temajivina tene peno yorwa. Negative sayina tene ko dilechia takichi gres.
So actually So the goal here actually is to reverse the tendency. So the tendency actually can sometimes be to put off the positive, to put off what is truly beneficial and positive, and to sort of have more immediacy when it comes to the negative. So actually we want to reverse those tendencies so that there's more delay, there's a sort of more of a putting off when it comes to just responding to negative emotions, for instance, that arise, or circumstances that stimulate kind of a negative reaction. So say, for instance, in these verses that came before about practicing patience, if somebody, for instance, does something or says something that is harmful, to not just immediately respond, but instead to put it off, to allow some space and some distance so that one doesn't have that kind of immediate reactivity to then just jump into negative responses or negative actions. But then when it comes to positive and beneficial actions, then we do want to have a sense of immediacy with that, rather than what is usually the tendency, which is to procrastinate and put it off. And so if we do put it off, what often happens is that we lose the opportunity.
tin tele yang ji sedang ta ya na wo dang tu su ta ya na wo dang tin kan go ma re sta chi tang da wo yin da ji da calendar na tin yor wa da chi tang da di the lunar calendar la chi o ti tele di na le ka le na ya wo de de le ka ya wo do gre de le ka le na do ga ma re se ya no da chi kon da ma da chi yor wa yin na yang chi tham be chu chi ne ka la ti che dang ro da ya do tu su ke cha khan yo ma ya sho ka se na nga chu chi go sa mi ti sam no te ga ra chi go le so lo wa
So Milarepa, for instance, has said that the best time to practice Dharma is in the very moment, in the exact moment that the intention to do so arises. So other than that, otherwise there are, all of these methods, for instance, for finding the most auspicious date or the best time, for instance, consulting with the lunar calendar and seeing, oh, this is, this date and this time, astrologically speaking, is the most fortuitous or the most auspicious, to begin this retreat or to do this practice or that practice and so forth. So there are all of these methods that sometimes are implemented to kind of, rather than just practicing or starting right then and there when the intention arises, to instead plan for a specific time and a specific date and so forth. And so rather than having an approach like that, really the best time to practice Dharma is any time. So in the very moment where that incentive arises, to do it right then and there.
tenida ko dongji wa tene melari padang tene chira da chirang gombo du jite teniji ta thambo ji chirang gombo du ji koran da jagi yori ina tene ji tigabla tene ji chetang shawa ninja la tene melari pe za sonde tene koran control lang yori ina ya ta tamadi the melari ben gormambo sunita ngoni ji koran be semni ni ta ngoni chuchi go sare ta melari pase de sama dembare sha ta ngoni chuchi gi samho yorwa te zamne tene kalawar se na ta nga jaja chona na lawa na yiri demba de nyang sha ta chuji metsen di na chuji mando we na tene ta koran ji tenjor ji melene be ta thola dore tene ta nga chu tene chigis jaja tambata chonolawa na chonto samdegis chuchigis yinayang tangati mando te na san kemeto zola tene jigla ngati samdegila tegana yeke tene nga saya thongya ro tene ji ya ki tene chigi sonwa te sonde tene melari bata te ta chu te ngone chu kaye nimi ki chuchi godam ta thagaran dis thandaran dis ta chu tene ma ye na san la che la tene chorang ke de saya thongya to so ya decision tene sare opportunity la sa ba sta cho dis am thanda dis la de tene coach ta ko tene sam di ba chirang gombo de tene yelda jitule mek de jitule mek de lo ma thak chen tene thop chen bo charwa o de ni tene 직당 원이 진행 가서 단단 삼로 당위는다 인지 민노 제도 되는 삼대야 기타적 지고로와 인다 대 제지와 말에 송도와
So, for instance, this is exemplified in the story where Milarepa encountered the hunter Gompo Dorje, who was hunting a deer. And there was the scene where Milarepa was meditating, and then first the deer appeared and came and sat down next to Milarepa, and then the dog who was chasing the deer then it came and saw Milarepa and became sort of immediately pacified and came and sat down next to Milarepa. And then the hunter appeared, and at first was furious, but then gradually as Milarepa Milarepa was singing he was singing his father's song, and the hunter also became pacified and realized the truth of everything that Milarepa was saying. He became so inspired that he decided that 100% from that moment on, he would dedicate his life to Dharma practice, that he would become a yogi and that he would follow Milarepa and just give up his worldly life, and instead he would practice Dharma as a disciple of Milarepa. And so he said this to Milarepa, and he said, I know that if I continue on with my life as it is, it will just be a complete waste of this human birth with leisures and endowments. So therefore, I am definitely determined. Without a doubt, I wish to give up all of the meaningless activities of worldly life, and instead to follow you. I will follow you and practice the Dharma. But first, I have to go home. I must go home. I must explain to my family what my plan is or what is happening, and gather some provisions. And so I will return. But first, I'll go home to sort of tie things up at home. But then Milarepa continued his Vajra song and explained to him that he shouldn't go home, that instead he should just follow him in that very moment.
If you want to practice, just now you do it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Milarepa understood that had he gone home, that then the opportunity would have been lost, that his mind would have changed, that he would have become absorbed, in the influences of the worldly life again, and that he would not have come back. And so instead, then Gompo Dorje took heed. He followed Milarepa's instructions, and then he actually ended up becoming one of his closest disciples and a truly realized, accomplished practitioner.
Da nyumle se da jetang ka jitte da dang ni bi le lo senari da ji lo bi le lo senari ten du da chamre nga so ji yang ji tendo와 나니 빌레로 세나데 다 지금도 치토고 말해 삼도 참다 당에 치토고 말해 삼바 라라랑 지금 뭐 팝니로 다티 용거 말해 삼바도 다 담다 용거 봐 벤차샤비나 나도 단다삼노 담비네요 for example 추운도 삼노 담비나 다 자베기 지기리 라메 지기리 nga so ta chi thu ma re zamban da da ya nga ma cha re ta nge chi thu ma re zamban da da ta ji khang da khang yin me na khang da ji ta te pe basically ka bo yung sa re ta nge chi tin de cha yo ma re so ta ti ko ji su chi wi na ta re jom na do ya yo re me chi dom na do ya yo re phu dom na do ya yo re phu mo dom na do ya yo lo che chung ta khari na chame drop thu gu wa drop thu ya ko reality kono drop thu gu re tin de tila ya ji nge chi thu gu ma re samba da te tega na ya rang ke ji rang ni chu tang ji tini o nge chi thu gu me do nge jong me do se tini o ma po ba ji is.
So then with respect to the laziness, which is kind of the laziness of discouragement, and it involves kind of putting down oneself or disparaging oneself. This type of laziness it comes from the mind that says, oh, who am I to think that I can accomplish the Dharma, that I can actually practice the Dharma. For example, so it's sort of like looking down on oneself or putting oneself down and not thinking that one really has what it takes. So for instance, the attitude of, oh, Dharma practice, that's for monks and lamas. How could I possibly really practice or accomplish the Dharma? It's really takes so much. It's so difficult, and I am not really capable. I just don't have what it takes. And so that kind of attitude is actually a form of laziness. Because anybody can accomplish the Dharma, whether they are a lay practitioner, whether they are monastic, whether they are male or female, whether they are young or old. So in reality, anybody who really practices with the proper motivation and the right level of commitment is capable of accomplishing the Dharma. And so it's important not to fall victim to thoughts of sort of discouragement, thinking that one isn't really cut out for it or something like this. It's important instead to generate a sense of confidence.
제가 나야 지로스야 지로스인데다 지탕에서 지발로로라고 지로스텔라고 했었대. 디냐디 지도들 지발라고. 늘베 첨보요는 유샬량 도구 말와. 어다 텐도 강다지 베 로로로 왔다가 선이 지고서 지다 가디나 비하한도.
치랑 치나 노요레가 인터넷 담보 지로기 레로라 비로와 데 procrastination 눈에 자와 닌시기 레로라와.
오케이. 다 자와 닌지라면 안 되그래.
오케이.
다 자왕 얘기지나 다지 잘라 힘바지 차대와는 오지 그와 되네지 오당하니 디스코 고사레 상반다 오지 그와 나한테 니소지 자고사레 상반다 다 된대지 양나지 unnecessary thing이는 노그로와
so then the laziness which is actually really the laziness of preferring kind of negative activities or unproductive activities, or really it's preferring negativity, is the mind that says, I'd rather do this other thing, like I'd rather sleep, or I'd rather, spend time, being entertained by this, that, or the other. Or right now, I'm not going to really focus on practice because I, prefer to do this other thing. So it's actually really more the mind of distraction, being distracted specifically by and falling into patterns or activities that are more not as virtuous. So it's the laziness of distraction. So jilu gilelo dampo de. Oh, okay. So the term actually for the laziness of procrastination, which is jilok, is actually the word ji. That's ji.
Yeah, jilok
is actually like kind of like a flabby calf, like the calf of a leg. That's
this calf. Oh no, this calf is here, right?
No, that's
this calf.
That's calf.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like the calf muscle. So it's like a flabby calf muscle, right?
The calf
So like if the calf is really big, like really big and flabby, then you can't really run. Like you can't keep up. You can't run. You're always kind of falling behind. And so it's sort of like when it comes to the side of virtue, you don't want to be falling behind. You want to get in front of that.
That may be Leros, that may be Lelo say at the two Carsana, Miguel, something that in the Miguel.
See, Jawa sing and give a little
that he not just think it under his jaggy. 이나 때 랍거린 다 단단 거니 알아서 놓다 maybe 길레로데다 단다 technology 비 폼 가발다 돼야 니게 빼내다 거네 전에지 조금씩 뭐 쉬어도 다 가기 팬 토구요디나 거네 전에 투수세야디 투수세야디 패키지 뭐래 나도 쳔미타 세야디 나도 그 쳔벨라 다 누혀 메타바래 봐 메타바디 나도 메타바세나네 칸라 당가서 메센들이 메센들 랭 당야요 말와 메센들 간디 조고서나 every second 진 조노 봐 이나다 틴디게 코지 투투세야데 세르나기 이나다 losing searching인데 가서다 등강원에 지나 technology 배 카판다올라 다 딱도와 근데 전에 딱 뭐네 미바스라 두보스니 뭐네 지금 메테나 두보스니래 삼고도 가르스나 투조 돌아왔단 말이야 투조 돌아왔다면 지고 말봐 근데 님비초 뭐지 용기요래 제가 나기게 다 지금 님만도 이나 지금 뭐도 뭐게 지금 나서 상이나래 파마다 뿌이나래 근데 지금 다 초보 있는 지금 파기 메인 받아고 지금 소리가 메인 받아고 지금 근데 그 세와지 지지배 딱고 뭐도 뭐그 커넥션이 여러와 근데 이제 여기 그 두소도 야보 계속 초보라고 이제 토비나 당만에 가능하지 어디가 봐 지금 당보 두소는 거 맞아 위나 빼 다들 그 컨버세이션 깨져야 요래 빼 휴요래 이내야 다 단다 상마 요 말도 요 말에 초보지 토비나 하이 라베아리 되니 뭐 가봤다데 단다 캔서 쉬어도 맞아다 참여하고 그러와 빼 가장 예직 통수로 공원이 지는 람가 컨스트럭션으로 와 컨스트럭션도 모델라다 디렉션 되냐로 와 거지 쇼 람데 인제 미니 코타고 한국 가봤다기도 와 근데 항상 액시던트 차세기로 와 보다 가와이나 같은 모델다나 가봤다기 요래 근데 다 같이 하디 요새는 뭐니 전에 카파틱 or power 차네 다 카파틱 찍게 라페나 메비나 되네 지금 뭐네 전에 다 찍자라 라송한다고 지 다 남주도 오면 가서 조포도 오면 되네 심대 용으로 와 조포지 라이나 되네 지 영어는 잘라 힘바로 오면 심대 요로 와 인다 단다 힘바 심대 시다 요만다 심대 제가 통과 카파 심세 심대보다 카파다 라파지 창은 만도 오면 되네 지다 현나로 오지 요만도 오지 배는 마로 오면 이제 맨다 키는 도고 그래 계속 맨다 메비는 현나로 와 다틱 소 야그로 와 이나코 맨다로 오지 킨도나 티스 코다 뽑한다고 오지 요로 와 뭐도 티손도 오지 차들어 와 근데 뭐네 전에 단다디 지다 미빌레로 세야디 뭐네 카파노 차디 요사래서
So then this fourth type of laziness, the mepe lelo, it sounds like it's kind of could be translated in a variety of ways. Like actually it sounded like he was saying that like self-defeating laziness. It's also sort of similar to the laziness of distraction. It also sounds like it could be, for instance, like the laziness of seduction, like being seduced by a more kind of negative or unproductive activity. So also like the laziness of delighting more in negativity. And so the main kind of modern expression of this, he thinks, is the hold that technology has on us. So mainly kind of our obsession with our phones, with our devices, such as our phones. The phone is really becoming something that's really such a source of so many faults, and it takes up so much time. It's really robbing so much time from people, and so it's really important to detach from this kind of obsessive need to be, connecting with the phone or interacting with the phone, because life is impermanent, and we don't live very long. This human life is actually very short, and so every second is precious, and every second that goes wasted is a moment lost, and really we're losing more and more of our precious moments because of our addiction to our devices or to technology. And so not only is this the case for creating more distraction and procrastination in our Dharma practice, but also it's really taking a toll on the genuine connections that people have with each other. And so instead of having, fostering wholesome relationships or connections with people, people are instead wasting time sort of distracted by their phone. And so there is alienation coming between couples, coming between parents and their children, coming between siblings and so forth because of this device culture. And so generally in a relationship between, close ones and relatives, what really nurtures that connection is time spent with one another, quality time. And so it used to, ordinarily, for instance, if one hasn't seen somebody for a long time, or there has been some time where people haven't been connected, and then you see your friend after a while, and then you are say, "Oh, hello, it's so nice to see you," and you greet your friend, and then you sit down and you have some tea and you have some long conversation and you catch up. But these days, actually, it's often the
So if
case.
if you meet them or friends, whatever, families, so the real have connections, or friend to friend. And also, like kind of if their conversation really interesting, and also like deeply it's like joy and peaceful. So also the meaningful, everybody can involved, like friends, whatever your friends meet each other, just talking. So kind of like both is just focus, But right now we don't have the connections, each or friends, whatever, or relatives. So first we say, hi, how are you? And then maybe within the 1 minute, maybe look the poem. So they already lose the connections, interesting or relax, whatever, they already lose.
So he also said that yesterday or a few days ago, actually it was strange. He was kind of observing a construction site, or there was some construction going on, and there was a guy who was maybe the contractor or something. He was
make directions, people like, roadblock, and then he goes, go.
So he was directing traffic.
Right.
Okay. And he was supposed to be, paying attention and directing traffic, but he was just standing there looking at his phone. So Drupal thought, this is really just a recipe for an accident to happen. I mean, he's not even paying attention to the work at hand. Instead, he's distracted by his phone. And so this is, very often the case, people in their jobs, in their workplace, being distracted by their devices, and people in their cars on their devices. He said he's noticed that everywhere he goes, he sees people on their phones, everywhere. So it's really becoming just such an overpowering force in people's lives, their phone, their device. In fact, if you leave home without your phone or you don't have your phone in your hand, you kind of panic. You feel like something's really missing. If you don't have your phone, it's a real problem. You have to have your phone. You can't be separated from your phone. It used to be like kind of like it's your best friend or something, like you've lost your best friend. You can't be without your best friend, whereas, if it really were a real person, and is that what you were saying? Mm-hmm. And you lost your best friend, you would feel kind of panicked and really worried. And this instead is a feeling that now has become replaced with an inanimate object, this telephone, this device. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And so it's also, it's almost as though it were a weapon. If you were in war, or a soldier in war, you would feel like you absolutely need to have your weapon. You need to have your gun. If you don't have your gun, then you have no way to sort of protect yourself. And so it's almost like, and to defeat others, or to defeat and fight. So if you were to go into a battlefield without your weapon, then you would feel like something's really wrong. So this is kind of the feeling that people have when they forget their device somewhere, or they leave their phone at home.
That 다 초발 menzibi kitundus
초발 menzibi kitundu so dingmendu tampo te chapte cheba yana yagarawa tampo na ta chopo tago chang 직전에 NGK lab no did you pick up that let's see. So then there are the three types of diligence. There's the armor-like diligence, the diligence of so like the diligence of activity. Here it says the diligence of working with effort, applying knowledge and effort. And then there's the insatiable diligence, or diligence which is like never feel, the feeling of never being satisfied with one's accumulation of virtue, feeling that there always is more to achieve.
다 거치존도 세야다 좋다 데리다 그냥 심천게 통치야라 되는 주라메와지 그러와 심천 담지라 산이 공부 고고 삼바다 거자선다 딜지 수직 유추 땅 마토비야 어텔레테니 다 주르존도 슬라부여사레스.
So the armor-like diligence is like a diligence that is connected with just a sense of absolute impenetrability or impenetrable resolve, sort of being completely resolute, that one will do whatever is needed to achieve the happiness and benefit of beings.
제가 나 이당가서 심지어서야 돼. 치미와지 요르와. 심지 치미바 요르. 텐디 tenna yike ji nga zo kojaseya de tsime ba tene je tene gogo gres nga zo yungdo wa tene ji pen simcha samno ji ta mi na simcha thong chi ya le lo yo mar wa pe musical ka por wa simcha sama ta wa ma da simcha sama ma be na mun do sam ta mi na be na sa sa thok ko thok mo ina ji yo wa ko ta wa ma da wa chi yung gre jo ba ma da wa chi yung gre tene ji ko do ba ma da wa chi yung gro wa ko chi na ba na cho ba wa tene ko cha ji mi bi na tene nga so be losing cha do yo ta pe nga so sheri pu ge ne ma me ji ba ta sa ya yo wa o da ti so no tene ji ta khandi chom bi na tene nga ji 이 담자 라기면 선반도 고 요사레스 마도도 심야치 같은 랍사인 거
So this armor-like diligence is that which sort of corresponds with the immensity of the task at hand. So as sentient beings are truly limitless, their needs and desires and capacities and differences are also limitless. And so in that way, we need the same sort of limitlessness and the stability of our resolve. If that is not present, then really it wouldn't take very much to become discouraged, because to truly achieve the benefit of sentient beings is no easy task. It is it is the greatest challenge that there is. And even if you don't think about it in terms of the bodhicitta resolve of liberating all sentient beings, even when we just examine how many differences there are among human beings, even in your close circle, or in with your housemate or your spouse or your close friend or loved one, how different are your desires, how different are your habits and conduct, how different are your attitudes and opinions, and so on and so forth. So if you
become never same,
it's very, so really we're almost never the same or on the same page about something. Yeah. So because of that, we really need armor, like the armor of resolve, to persevere nonetheless. And if that armor of resolve, or that armor, the armor-like diligence isn't present, then there's the danger of, for instance, becoming like Shariputra in the story of where he prematurely had gifted his eyeball to the demon. And then lost, as a result, lost his commitment.
어다테 코치 존르레 다 졸베 존르 세야 되다 가서 준투네 배 졸와 세야 되다 가서 액티비티 단테와 액티비티 코치 자바도야 데파바야 어다테 게와 테레스.
And then the second type of diligence, which involves ongoing effort and activity, is essentially the diligence that makes effortful diligence in practicing virtue, always going in the direction of what is wholesome and avoiding that which is unwholesome, and abandoning non-virtue.
일단 라스트 초발면제 존르야 초발면 당아배 존르 뭐지 추고도 여러 땅에 조배만 냠내치 당아가 뭐 다이 다 배전 대액선수야 되니 제아요 말이스 가서 타르바 탐진 준비 complete 와 타르바 탐진 준비 공부마다 봐도 초반제야요 말이스 땅에지 치이스야로 지가 내지 치차인스야로 돼 용구요 말이스 그 윤투네 거야 사르로야지 뭐도비 어당에 치차인 대액선수야 용구요 말이스.
So then the diligence, which is the insatiable diligence, is the diligence that is unrelenting, that really feels like it's never enough, or one is never satisfied. There is always further to go. There's always more to do. And when it comes to Dharma practice, for instance, if one gets to a point where one kind of becomes complacent because one thinks, oh, I've already did so much, I did, this many years of retreat, or I recited this many accumulations of mantra, and I've, done all of this Dharma practice. So now I'm good. Now I think I'm set. No, that is not the case. And so therefore, until one really manifests the goal of liberation, freedom, and complete awakening, fully perfected Buddhahood, there's always further to go. There's always more to do. And so therefore, this kind of insatiable diligence is the understanding that one really it never gets to the point where one has practiced enough, or where one's practice is really finished.
오다 티지라고 있다. 고제 존주스야 tin사다. 고제 존주 책기도 존중 나래. 묘모 소지 투네나스. 묘모마다 당게 직등이라도 랍사임바베 몇 참마베 묘모바 요래 고지과 요마르와 세 아피니 요마레스 나이레 묘모 투네나스. 넘버 동도 센서 됐다. 무도 참 찍어지 창요 말와. 이나 가르라고 요나 동타타 갈라고는 배. 고자 말아와지 구글에스. 넘버 동도 센서 됐스. 랍나티 가르사나 테르와. 넘버 칸디직다 뭐 베나뭐 천 동요나. 근데 콘소크 베 두블랍스기로와. 다음에 같이 랍 동타 랍스기로와 이내요 그 같이 랍고 요나데 레고리스다 텔지 디스코레지 차야 요 말이스 배나존레 화라 소비 싱게힌스 다 벤도이나 싱게디 화 동타차 mambo 요나 다 배르와 싱게도 거 희나 희라 주토시라 요 말와고 어다 테나이지 주도메어 말이 희나요 말와 그 코로나도 배 디그니티 고 리토그로 다 텐나 이게 지 리토그레 정도 준주.
Okay. As there are so many different dispositions and afflictive emotions among sentient beings. So this is connected with the armor-like diligence. As there are so many different afflictive emotions and dispositions of sentient beings, and none of them have the same opinion, and there's no person, no two people who are the same, then there's any variety, of any possible variety that can arise, that can occur in relation to others. And so therefore, it's absolutely necessary to have the resolve that is unchanging, this armor-like diligence. If this armor-like diligence is there, then regardless of the differences among beings, regardless of whatever it is that one is met with, one becomes like a lion among foxes. So just like a lion in the midst of many foxes has no fear, or there's no danger, feels that there's no sense of being in danger or worry of being sort of defeated by the foxes, because the lion is most supreme. The lion always has this dignity, among all the beings of the forest. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, there's one from Steve Breslow. And Steve asks, isn't the critical phase in this stanza, for the sake of all beings, even more than diligence itself. Does not diligence for oneself only place one in the category of hearers and solitary realizers, not of bodhisattvas, and into the category of Hinayana practice, not Mahayana practice?
So Gayansana de Sholoka de la de Sowo de la Girawapena de Sundru Simchim Pen Toya Shengi Dun Druyaki Chidu, then it's Sundru K Chimbo Yore Ti Yorawa, then it's Chitang Tata Pache Chirang Sungpa Nangshinti Sundru Rangi Dun Chikpo Sundru Dawachagi Marebe, then it Dinda Dawachana, then Yang they take ba Mimbegi Kunlong La Shoryu Marebe, they take ba Chimbo Mayemba.
리다 단다 띵가 또 땅가서 제너랭에 라야테 칼라고스나 제가 칼라웨 있는 가서 존도 고그로와 존도 특히 쳔보레스 대단 냠들라 되다 단다지 가서 고지 존도 있어야 한다고도 저게 존도 있어야 한다고 초발면 저리데 그때가 진부 존도 차로 그레스 심지어 단다라와
So yes, what determines whether the practice is essentially the same of diligence, but what determines whether it is an aspiration of like Mahayana or Hinayana level aspiration has to do with the motivation. So of course, if the so first he was speaking generally that diligence is very important.
Benefit our own life,
and is of benefit to our own life. But and then in addition to this, actually these three levels of diligence that he has just explained are the Mahayana practice of diligence.
I think that's it for Facebook and Zoom, but unless anybody else on the call wants to ask a live question.
Actually, there's a question here. Sorry that it was sent to us privately. So it says, even though self-liberation shouldn't be our goal, isn't it necessary to be able to help others find liberation? So penarang dun de tarpa toya rangi dun gichidu cheju cheya menayang yapo menayang me dinda ngato gogyo marawa yena yang de simchin shimba nune pimba druya gichidu rang dangpo tarpa to gogyo marebe ngato yang rang tarpa to goagi kunlong gogyo sarawa
ari natati kotera wa ngato de songbare ko meje parvina te thobaji le awun kare songre 베트나기 단단가 중간에 심장 통 섬노 땅비나 랑 탈바 톱노 그러와 베네지츠 밀리 송버리 에테네 켐벤 담지 랑데 주즈도 뭐니 지난 가서 심장을 매기 요리데 심장 수매위나 민겐 거랑 상디노 그러와
So actually the reality of the fact is that these two are very much kind of one and the same because in that there's so first he said where there is fire there's smoke. Rebe.
Yes.
And so actually when the objective is to achieve the benefit of sentient beings, even when there's no thought of achieving one's own purpose, what happens as a natural result of that is that one's own purpose is also achieved. So by having the motivation to bring all sentient beings to the state of liberation and awakening, one achieves the purpose, or this becomes the cause for attaining liberation oneself.
고톱톱 로지 되게 텔란 로지들 라세기 주다 주트 가선 데려와 산디 샤자도 봐 개꾼다리 대인들이 대 거랑 게더니 텔라비 걸어와 ngomarawada ta lo tong tha jewa tong tha ngola ta ngoma sala gurwa ta jewa kanina tini ngola ngarani chikpa imbas jibe na choran dis do yores choran ke ngara pajugi yore te choran ka koma yores
Gumbo ben lapson.
딱 ngoma ngaran chikpa dis tarungal choran do yores chu nga pajugi do choran koma yores 얘네 야 초라 티기라 초라 심chen 담지 그 통치네 다 상지 송레스 딘둥가 나랑 타동 나랑 섬노티 나랑 섬노탄디 다가 타동 베지 ordinary 노 차디 거레스 딘디네 다 트레이닝 초라 차체기 슬라비 거라 딘두 현변 수치고나 그 상코나지 노로 현변 정연데
So there's the story that probably some of you are familiar with, the stories of Gompo Bin, who had these encounters with the Lhasa Jowo, so the statue of the Buddha and Lhasa. And so when he arrived in front of the Jowo, he said to the statue, he said, "You and I were once the same. We were actually no different. And in fact, you were even worse than I was a long time ago, like thousands of years ago.
Or lifetimes.
Or lifetimes ago.
Okay.
Thousands of lifetimes ago, sorry. You and I were the same. We were no different. In fact, you were even worse than I was because I had a cow and you stole it. But then later on, you went on to develop the intention to liberate all sentient beings. So you dedicated yourself to benefiting sentient beings, and therefore you became a Buddha. So now I prostrate to you.
No, I am.
Oh, yes, but I...
Still like But
since I continued to only really think about myself or only really be concerned about myself, I just remained an ordinary being. So today you are a Buddha and I am an ordinary being, so I prostrate to you.
So the
point here being that the source of becoming or the cause of becoming Buddha, of awakening, is the wish to benefit others, the altruistic mind.
So interesting. Mahayana is, we said, normally we hear is all. I take care of myself, you know. So, but really is that this someone or take care of myself, thinking myself, not really take care. Actually, reality not take care. But Mahayana person, they really take care of themselves, really take care. So we ordinarily thinking just. We say, oh, he not take care of all the sentient beings, but realities really take care of themselves. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so maybe we can close then with the closing prayers on page 24. And as you can see, there's an announcement here about the Drupchen, which is next weekend. So hopefully everyone will be able to join us for that. Is there anything, Damien, you would like to say about the Drupchen?
Yeah, sure. You know, this year is a little bit different because we're online. In the past, Japan and Virginia and others have had the opportunity to create a sand mandala at the Peace Week, but unfortunately due to the pandemic, that's been postponed. But we've decided to hold the Drupchen online. And so it's gonna begin on October 9th, Friday, October 9th. and go through Sunday, October 11th. And it's going to be each day during the weekend from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And there's going to be pretty much three sessions a day with breaks in between. And the first session is going to be from 10 to 1. The second session is from 2 to 4. And the third session is from 5 to 8. Virginia, we'll be posting the sadhana pretty soon on the website. And you can download it there. And we'll be using that sadhana during the Drupchen. And there'll be continuous recitation of the mantras through those three sessions. And feel free to join at any point during the Drupchen during the weekend, whenever you have time to do. If you have any other questions, you can either see the details on the website, or you can write an email to drungnor@gmail.com. So I think that's it for now, unless there's anything else you wanted to say, Virginia.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Right. So also we can have to send the money recordings, probably everybody available.
So I think what he's saying is, if possible, what he would like to do is to send the recording of the Mani mantra with the melody that we usually use here for reference to everyone, so that you can be playing it in your home. In fact, maybe you can just have it going throughout the whole duration of the Drupchen, even if you're, when you're not on and participating over Zoom, so that you sort of create that environment or that feeling of the container of the Drupchen by having it going in your home. So is there a way, do we know if there's a way that we can do that?
Sure, no problem. I can send that out tomorrow.
Great.
And also I think I told that Tsutem. So Tsutem, maybe he can join. So Tsutem is very good. So last year here, Mani Drupchen. And also he was in the Dongwon Monastery in Tibet. He was very young. So maybe one session he do like leading the chanting. And also we can sometimes, we also Sangha members leading the session. So
And yeah, also just keep in mind that you can, just like we do when we have the Drupchen in person, you can come log on and off whenever you need. So you can come and go freely without feeling like you have to log on at any particular point in time. But just as much as you're able to participate, then the better. Yeah.
Also, Virginia might want to mention that the text might vary slightly from the one that people may have had from before.
I can barely hear you, Paula. I'm sorry. Can you speak up? I know you're saying something about the text. I got that much.
Just let people know that if they have the text from last year, that it might vary from updated text. So to please make sure they can download it.
Yes, so that is my my aspiration is to make some changes into the translation in the text, because there are some things that some changes that can be made that will improve the translation. So my hope is to do that this week, maybe Monday. And as soon as I'm able to do that, we'll make sure that it's available for upload, and maybe we can send out an announcement about it. But it's fine to use the text that you have. If you have one at home and you would prefer to use that, just know that there might be a little bit of variation, and what is being recited in English. It won't be anything that major, but there could be some variation. Thank you, Paula.
Hello, Virginia and Drupon. I'd like to ask a question about the melody for the mantras. I know that there are many different melodies, and if there's a particular one that we like ourselves, because our microphones will be muted during the recitation, can we use the different melodies while maybe you are using your favorite melodies? Or should we all be using the same melody at the same time?
Right. So yes, Lance, right, you're right. So there is, I think Yeah, even though within, you know, Tigunkaji, even though like in the US, like Garchian, which is a little bit different, and also Digungti is a little bit the different. So, but also my monastery is a little bit different. So, yeah, so we actually, this is not sure exactly, but this, the Mani Drupchen, so my monastery is since that Mani Drupchen started King Zongsen Gambo. So this, we believe this Mani melody is probably since, you know, King Zongsen Gambo. So, so that's a reason is we using this melody. So, little bit different. So, but also just on thing, you know, so just maybe your home, you can chant, you know, different melodies. That's fun. But also we grew up. So I don't know. So how we do actually together, or I don't know how work. So sometimes we together is good, but sometimes everybody say different things. And then Zoom is maybe, I don't know.
Well, Zoom won't be able to function with everybody chanting together. I think what will happen is it will cut, people will be cut off and it will become really choppy.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have probably one leader at a time. So, you know, somebody will be leading the mantra and then other people can be on mute and following that. Or you can also have I guess it'll get tricky if you're playing the recorded mantra at home and you have the person leading on the screen. So I don't know how, you know, maybe people will just figure out how they want to do it individually.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
But we can, you know, learning beginning, maybe there's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
The synchronization between each person's session is never very close. I mean, it's not close. So in other words, it's impossible to have several people singing the same thing at the same time.
You
It's
mean
my
in
experience.
general or?
Yeah, in general, in my experience.
I think maybe two people, like, yeah, we open up maybe like each session, sort of two leading the mentors, maybe there's open, two is okay, I think, you know, so.
You mean two people in different places?
Yeah.
Yeah, different places are not necessarily synchronized.
Yeah, I'm going to second Virginia here. You can't have two different mics going. They will override each other. There needs to be one chant leader, or the mics cut into each other.
Yeah, and then the screens are going to bounce back and forth too. It'll be disorienting for people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But maybe if two people are together in the same place and would like to lead,
Yeah, that's no problem.
Or maybe someone leads the first hour and someone leads the second hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like that, you know, so.
So we'll have more
the details, and then is who's leading, and also like we can make sort of timetable.
Actually, dini di michik denda di umze che duking garsi mopa yona ngasola la chogre la kosarbe yamna mala. Okay.
Okay, so now the dedication.
So we'll do the dedication on page 24 of the prayer book. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Dragungpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Hey, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Drupal and Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.